The manila folder sits in a climate-controlled vault beneath Pennsylvania Avenue. Inside, thousands of pages that were supposed to stay buried forever. Documents that 3 American presidents refused to release. Files so sensitive that even decades after a young president's blood stained the streets of Dallas, the government still trembles at the thought of their contents becoming public. On November 22, 1963, at 12:30 p.m., President John F. Kennedy's motorcade turned onto Elm Street. What happened the next 6 seconds changed America forever. But what happened in the 6 decades after may be even more disturbing. The Warren Commission told us Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Case closed. Except the case has never been closed. Not really, because buried within millions of pages of classified documents lies a story the American people were never meant to know. A story of shadow agencies, foreign conspiracies, and secrets protected by the most powerful office on Earth. Tonight, we open the JFK files. The morning of November 22nd began like any other campaign stop. Kennedy was in Texas to mend political fences, to shore up support in a state he'd need for his 1964 re-election. Dallas was hostile territory. Just weeks before, the United Nations ambassador Adlai Stevenson had been physically attacked there by right-wing protesters. Kennedy's advisors warned him. His wife Jackie later said he had a premonition, but Kennedy went anyway. He climbed into that open-top Lincoln Continental with Texas Governor John Connally and their wives. The bubble top was removed. The president insisted on it. He wanted the people to see him. Dealey Plaza was packed with spectators. Office workers hung out windows. Families lined the curbs. Abraham Zapruder stood on a concrete pedestal with his 8mm camera, hoping to capture a moment of history. He captured something else entirely. 3 shots rang out. Maybe 4. Witnesses would never agree. The president's head exploded in a pink mist. The most powerful man in the world was suddenly, impossibly dead. Chaos erupted. Secret Service agent Clint Hill leaped onto the moving limousine as Jackie Kennedy crawled onto the trunk, reaching for pieces of her husband's skull. The motorcade raced to Parkland Hospital, but it was already over. At 1 p.m., President Kennedy was pronounced dead. 90 minutes later, aboard Air Force One, Lyndon Johnson took the oath of office with Jackie Kennedy standing beside him, still wearing her blood-stained pink suit. Within hours, Dallas police arrested Lee Harvey Oswald, a 24-year-old former Marine who worked at the Texas School Book Depository overlooking Dealey Plaza. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Oswald's rifle was found on the 6th floor. 3 spent cartridges lay near the window. Witnesses placed him in the building. He'd shot and killed a police officer while fleeing. Open and shut. Except 2 days later, as Oswald was being transferred to county jail, nightclub owner Jack Ruby stepped from the crowd and shot him dead on live television. The only person who could definitively explain what happened in Dealey Plaza died before he could stand trial. And America's questions died with him. Or rather, they multiplied. President Johnson quickly assembled the Warren Commission, led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, to investigate the assassination. 10 months later, they released their conclusion. Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. No conspiracy, no second gunman, just a troubled ex-Marine with a mail-order rifle. The American public wanted to believe it. They needed to believe it, because the alternative was too terrifying. But doubts festered immediately. Too many witnesses heard shots from the grassy knoll, not the book depository. Too many inconsistencies in the autopsy. Too many questions about Oswald's connections to anti-Castro Cubans, to the CIA, to the Soviet Union, to organized crime. The Zapruder film, when finally shown to the public in 1975, seemed to show Kennedy's head snapping backward, suggesting a shot from the front. How could Oswald, firing from behind, cause that? The doubts grew into suspicion. The suspicion hardened into certainty for millions of Americans. Their government was lying to them. And they were right to be suspicious. Because in 1976, the House Select Committee on Assassinations reopened the case. Their conclusion was explosive President Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy. A second gunman probably fired at the motorcade. The committee pointed fingers at organized crime, at anti-Castro Cuban exiles, at a vast web of actors with motive and means. But then something strange happened. The report came out, made headlines for a few days, and was quietly shelved. The official narrative returned. Lone gunman, case closed. Move along. What the public didn't know was that thousands upon thousands of documents related to the assassination remained classified. Locked away. Eyes only. In 1992, Congress passed the JFK Records Act, mandating that all assassination-related documents be released by 2017. Finally, America would learn the truth. Except 2017 came and went. President Trump, under pressure from the CIA and FBI, blocked the release of hundreds of documents. National security, he was told. Sources and methods. Too dangerous. In 2021, President Biden did the same. More delays. More secrets. Even now, in 2024, thousands of pages remain classified or heavily redacted. What could possibly justify keeping 60-year-old documents secret? What is still so dangerous that 3 presidents from both political parties have refused to release it? Here's what we know from the files that have been released. Lee Harvey Oswald was not some random loner. His connections run deep and dark. In 1959, he defected to the Soviet Union, renouncing his American citizenship. He lived in Minsk, married a Russian woman, then suddenly returned to America in 1962 with barely any scrutiny from U.S. authorities. Strange for a defector during the height of the Cold War. In New Orleans in 1963, Oswald spent the summer handing out pro-Castro leaflets, getting arrested for scuffling with anti-Castro activists. But here's where it gets weird. The address he stamped on his leaflets, 544 Camp Street, was the same building that housed former FBI agent Guy Bannister, who ran operations supporting anti-Castro Cuban exiles. The same exiles the CIA was training to overthrow Fidel Castro. Was Oswald actually pro-Castro, or was he infiltrating leftist groups for U.S. intelligence? The released files reveal that the CIA had a keen interest in Oswald before the assassination. They had a thick file on him. They tracked his movements in Mexico City in September 1963, when he visited the Cuban and Soviet embassies, ostensibly seeking a visa to Cuba. CIA surveillance photographed someone at the embassies, but that person didn't look like Oswald. Who was it? The agency has never explained. Then there's Jack Ruby, the man who silenced Oswald forever. Ruby wasn't just a nightclub owner. Declassified FBI documents reveal he had extensive ties to organized crime, to mafia figures in Chicago, New Orleans, and Dallas. Ruby knew Oswald, or at least knew of him. Witnesses placed them together in the weeks before the assassination. So why did Ruby kill Oswald? He claimed he did it to spare Jackie Kennedy the trauma of a trial. But Ruby himself later said there was more to the story, that he couldn't tell the truth because he feared for his family's safety. He died of cancer in 1967, taking his secrets with him. The most troubling revelations in the released files involve the CIA's relationship with Cuban exiles and the Mafia. In the early 1960s, the agency recruited organized crime figures in a bizarre plot to assassinate Fidel Castro. Mob bosses Sam Giancana, Santo Trafficante, and Johnny Rosselli worked directly with the CIA on Operation Mongoose and other schemes involving poison pills, exploding cigars, and mafia hitmen. These same crime figures also hated the Kennedy brothers. Robert Kennedy, as Attorney General, was prosecuting the mafia relentlessly. The crime bosses felt betrayed. They'd helped JFK win the 1960 election through vote rigging in Chicago, and now Bobby was destroying them. Meanwhile, anti-Castro Cuban exiles felt equally betrayed. Kennedy had abandoned them at the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, refusing to provide air support, leaving over 1,000 men dead or captured. These exiles, trained by the CIA, armed by the U.S. government, expert in assassination and covert operations, now viewed Kennedy as a traitor. So here's the nightmare scenario that keeps getting redacted from the files. What if elements within the CIA working with anti-Castro Cubans and mafia figures they partnered with to kill Castro, turned those same resources against President Kennedy? What if Oswald, with his strange connections to both pro-Castro and anti-Castro elements, was exactly what he claimed to be, a patsy? The released documents show that CIA officers lied to the Warren Commission, withheld crucial information, and destroyed files related to their Cuban operations. An internal CIA memo from 1964, released decades later, shows the agency feared the investigation might uncover their Castro assassination plots, creating what one official called the worst possible scandal imaginable. The scandal wasn't that they plotted to kill Castro. The scandal was that those same plots might have led to Kennedy's death. More pieces of the puzzle emerged from the files. David Atlee Phillips, a CIA officer who ran anti-Castro operations, was identified by multiple witnesses as being in contact with Oswald in the months before the assassination. Phillips denied it under oath, but other CIA officers later suggested he lied. Howard Hunt, another CIA operative who would later become infamous for his role in Watergate, was allegedly in Dallas on November 22nd. His son later claimed Hunt made a deathbed confession to being peripherally involved in the assassination. Sano Trafficani, the mafia boss who worked with the CIA on Castro plots, told his lawyer that Kennedy was going to be hit and that Ruby was connected to the plot. The lawyer came forward after Trafficani died. But the most damning evidence may be the simplest: the CIA's desperation to keep these files classified. If Oswald really acted alone, if there really was no conspiracy, why the secrecy? Why block release of 60-year-old documents? National security, they say. But protecting what? Protecting whom? Every intelligence officer connected to these events is long dead. The Soviet Union collapsed 3 decades ago. Castro died in 2016. There's no operational reason to classify these documents unless they reveal something that still threatens the powerful. Unless they reveal that elements of the American government, whether rogue CIA officers, military officials, or their criminal partners, murdered a sitting president, and that subsequent administrations covered it up to protect the institutions. Think about what that means. It means that for 60 years, Americans have been lied to about the most traumatic event in modern American history. It means the people tasked with protecting the president may have facilitated his murder. It means the entire foundation of trust between government and citizens has been poisoned by this one terrible secret. The implications extend beyond history. If they got away with it then, what else have they gotten away with? What other lies have been so thoroughly buried that we accept them as truth? The JFK assassination isn't just about one day in Dallas. It's about the moment America lost its innocence and stumbled into a darker world where truth became negotiable and power operated in shadows. The files that remain classified, the pages still redacted, represent the final barrier between Americans and their history. Presidents promised transparency, then backed down when the intelligence agencies pushed back. Always the same excuse: sources and methods, national security, need to know. But the American people have a need to know. They've had that need for 6 decades. Every year that passes without full disclosure is another year the truth dies a little more. Witnesses pass away. Documents deteriorate. Memory fades. That may be the point. Wait long enough, and there's no one left who cares. No one left who remembers. No one left who demands answers. But some questions don't expire. Some wounds don't heal. November 22nd, 1963 is one of those wounds. Until every file is opened, until every page is read, until the American people finally learn what their government has been hiding, that wound stays fresh. The truth may be disturbing. It may be ugly. It may shatter our faith in institutions we want to believe in. But the alternative, this perpetual state of doubt and suspicion, is worse. Democracy cannot function when the people cannot trust their government. And the government cannot be trusted when it continues to hide the truth about the murder of a president. So the files sit in that vault beneath Pennsylvania Avenue. Thousands of pages, millions of words. Secrets that 3 presidents and countless intelligence officials have deemed too dangerous for Americans to know. What's in those files? Maybe evidence of a conspiracy. Maybe proof of incompetence so profound it had to be hidden. Maybe nothing at all, just embarrassing details that make powerful agencies look bad. But here's what we know for certain. They're hiding something. They've been hiding it for 60 years. And every president who has the power to release those files chooses instead to keep them locked away. That choice tells us everything. It tells us the truth is worse than we imagine. It tells us the conspiracy theorists might be right. It tells us that on a sunny day in Dallas, Lee Harvey Oswald may not have acted alone. And it tells us that the people who really killed John F. Kennedy got away with it because the system protected them. The Warren Commission's conclusion that Oswald acted alone requires us to believe in a perfect storm of coincidences. That this troubled ex-Marine just happened to work in a building overlooking the motorcade route. That he just happened to be an expert marksman despite mediocre scores in the Marines. That he just happened to have connections to Castro supporters, CIA operations, and Russian intelligence. That Jack Ruby just happened to shoot him before he could talk. That the CIA just happened to destroy files related to their Cuban operations right after the assassination. That witnesses just happened to die in unusual circumstances before testifying. One coincidence, perhaps. Two, maybe, but dozens? At some point, coincidence becomes conspiracy. And conspiracy becomes fact. The House Select Committee understood this in 1976 when they concluded Kennedy was probably killed as the result of a conspiracy. But that conclusion was too dangerous. It raised too many questions. It threatened too many powerful interests. So it was buried under new investigations, new theories, new distractions. And the official story returned. Oswald acted alone. Nothing to see here. Move along. But we can't move along. Not when the files remain classified. Not when the questions remain unanswered. Not when the truth remains hidden. The American people deserve to know what happened on November 22nd, 1963. They deserve to know if their government was involved. They deserve to know if the men sworn to protect the president actually killed him. They deserve the truth, no matter how ugly, no matter how disturbing. Every day those files stay classified is another day the government tells the American people, you can't handle the truth. We know better than you. Trust us. But that trust was broken in Dallas. It was shattered when Oswald was murdered before he could speak. It was destroyed by decades of lies, cover-ups, and classified documents. That trust cannot be restored until the truth is revealed. Until then, the JFK assassination remains America's open wound. A crime unsolved. A mystery perpetuated by those who claim to serve the people but serve only themselves. The files exist. The truth exists. Somewhere in that vault beneath Pennsylvania Avenue, between thousands of pages of redacted text and classified memos, lies the answer to the question that has haunted America for 6 decades. Who really killed President Kennedy? And until those files are opened, until every page is read, until the truth finally comes to light, we already know one answer with absolute certainty. They're still getting away with it.